Hi everyone, this is Subeda from Zephyr Lake Carmelite Mission. Today I'm going to continue with my series on the Lake Carmelite formation. I'll be summarizing lesson 15. Actually, lesson 15 or chapter 15 is split into two parts, A and B, but I'm going to combine them and have one lesson for chapter 15. And again, this is part of the phase 2, part 2 of the Lake Carmelite formation, which is our year 3 in formation. And this is a beautiful chapter with so many great quotes and wonderful sentences that I just decided that I would just take down a summary of phrases and excerpts from the book Climbing the Mountain instead of using my own words. So I've tried to stay true to what's in the textbook for most of my summarization today. Again, this is not a replacement for attending a formation lesson in your local community, but I sure hope that you're going to find this video helpful. Even if you're not yet in phase 3, it's still a helpful introduction so you can continue your formation in your community. So the topic for today is the Carmelite family and the communion of saints. So if you remember a couple weeks ago when I did the video on the community, I described that the community is not just our local Lake Carmelite community, but it includes a whole a wider context of the entire communion of saints. So this particular chapter is dedicated to that topic of the communion of saints and the Carmelite family. So the Carmelite family in a wider context is part of the communion of saints. When we speak of saints, we mean not only those saints who have been formally recognized by the Church's canonization process for their exemplary lives of holiness or martyrdom, but we also refer to all the Christians, living and dead, as part of the communion of saints. And the word saint itself comes from the Latin word sanctus, which means holy. And this is just my personal reflection. When my daughter was about 3.5 years old, we had this icon of Our Lady of Perpetual Help in her room. And she told me that one night, the picture came alive and our Blessed Mother and the angels in the icon came alive, and the Blessed Mother spoke to her and just said 2 words, "Be holy." And I took that very seriously, to heart. And I remind myself, and also I remind my children very often of this, because we are always in a struggle, a battle against our temptations, our trials in this life. And with God's help, we can be holy. So that's what it is to be a saint, is to be holy. Saints are people who open their minds and hearts and their entire being to God, practicing what Carmelites call vacare Deo, or making space for God in our being, in our deepest being, and in our whole life. The person who's open to God is gradually transformed over the course of their life to such an extent that they are filled with utter fullness of God. Ephesians chapter 3 verse 19. This process is sometimes called divinization. God grows in us and we grow in God. So close we become to God that the distinction is hard to make between us and God. We become one with God. Many holy men and women begin to see God as God really is as they embark on this journey. They become absorbed into the life of God, and their will perfectly conforms entirely with God's will. They also begin to see and love the world and those in it as God sees and loves. And St. Therese of Lisieux said, I want to spend my heaven in doing good on earth. That is sanctity, wanting to do good on earth and to be sorry for the times we fail to do good, and not making excuses for our evil actions or evil thoughts or evil words. That is a sin of presumption, assuming that if we do evils and the evil means that we use to achieve some lofty end, does not justify us, and we will not be saved if we persist and if we make excuses for our evil actions and evil thoughts and evil words. Sanctity means wanting to do good on earth. These holy men and women, these saints, inspire us by their heroic lives so that we can be living signs of God's saving power in this world that is hurting, in this world that is troubled, and in this world that is full of suffering. We are called to be signs of God's saving power. As Carmelites, we wear the brown scapular, which should be a daily reminder to us that we are God's saints, His chosen ones. He chose us. We didn't choose Him, He chose us. And we must clothe ourselves with love and only love. There should be no room for hatred in us. No matter how much excuses we can make, there is absolutely no room for hatred in a holy heart, in a heart that is pure. We share in Elijah's prophetic voice to tell the world that all are loved very deeply and freely by God, who calls us into the desert oasis of His love. Almost 3,000 years ago, in a materialistic and self-centered society, Elijah lived according to God's values. And this is what we are called to emulate as Carmels. In Carmel, we are blessed with great saints like Elijah, who have already ascended the mountain before us, who have already taken the journey of transformation. They've already undertaken the journey, and we are called to imitate them, and we can imitate them. The Carmelite family is unique in the Western Church in venerating an Old Testament saint like Elijah to such an extent. We bridge the Old and New Testaments and are a reminder that the communion of saints stretches across all time. There is difference in the way we honor and revere the saints, that's called dulia, versus the worship and adoration we give only to God, that is called latria. So there's a difference between how we honor God versus honoring the saints. The worship and adoration is only given to God, whereas honor and reverence is given to saints. And the first of all saints is Mary, the Mother of God. As we know, at the wedding of Cana, when people came seeking her advice, she pointed to her son and she spoke her last recorded words in the Gospel account of St. John, chapter 2, verse 5. Do whatever he tells you. Mary is, in Carmelite tradition, our mother, our sister, our patron, our queen. She's the beauty of Carmel, and she's a woman of pure heart, puritas cordis. We travel with Mary to Jesus, and through Mary, we come to Jesus. The saints give us a height to aspire to on our journey up the mountain, on the summit of which is Christ Himself. Carmelites have also traditionally had a great devotion to the saints associated with the family of Jesus, not just to Mary, His mother, but also to His foster father, St. Joseph, Mary's parents, Anne and Joachim, and also Jesus' cousins, John the Baptist primarily, but also his other cousins like Saint James and Saint Jude. Carmelites revere Saint Joseph as a protector of Mary and also as a principal protector of the Carmelite order. We also uphold John the Baptist, who came in the spirit of Elijah in proclaiming and preparing the way for the ministry of Jesus Christ. We are called to make the family of Jesus our own family and to live charitably as brothers and sisters. We are invited to be saints who are intimate with God. Not many will be recognized as saints by the formal canonization process of the Holy See in Rome because there are many steps in this official process. In fact, I believe that the hidden sainthood is far more meritorious because it is hidden rather than it is being declared. But at the same time, we know we need the examples of the saints, and so the formal canonization process gives us those saints that we can imitate. Of course, first of all, we imitate Christ, but the saints also help us because we can relate to them, based on our circumstances and our situations and our own attributes and characteristics. So the first step to official sainthood is to be declared as a servant of God. Usually that takes like about 5 years after the person dies and their sanctity is investigated. Then a person is declared as a servant of God. The second step is to be declared as venerable. This happens after the Congregation for the Cause of Saints has reviewed and studied the life and the reputation of the person in very, very great detail. And then they have decided that this person is worthy of veneration, which means we can pray with their relics, we can ask for their intercession. And then the next step is beatification, which occurs after there has been at least one extraordinary miracle that is scientifically and medically proved, through the intercession of that venerable person who is in the process of being initiated in the formal saints of the church. The final step is the canonization process, which happens that's the final step, and after there has been at least a second extraordinary miracle. Now, there are some exceptions to this that are made. There are some fast-track processes that have been done, especially like with martyrs. They are immediately declared as blessed or they are beatified without going through the first two initial steps. They go straight to beatification. And then, after the miracle, then they have the canonization for the martyrs. Also, some of the saints, they become patron saints of certain causes. As an example, Saint Andrew Corsini, whom we can invoke now, is the patron saint of riots because he was noted as a peacemaker between quarreling Italian houses in the 1370s. We can pray for the intercession of Saint Andrew Corsini in these difficult times. Also, most of the Carmelite saints that we have are either hermits or friars, nuns, and sisters, but many of them at some point of time in their initial early life, they were lay Carmelites too, and then later they became, nuns or sisters. The principal veneration of the saints is through the liturgy of the church. That is at Holy Eucharist, when we celebrate Mass, and also during the praying of the liturgy of the hours or the divine office. And there are different ranks for these feasts for celebrating the life of the saints in the church's liturgy. And the highest rank is called a solemnity. The next is a feast. Then you have a memorial. And a memorial, when it falls on a Sunday, is not celebrated because a Sunday's liturgy supersedes that. And finally, you have an optional memorial, which is the lowest rank of the feast, and it is left up to the community or the diocese or the individual to observe it. So it is truly an optional memorial. And also we have on November 1st, the church observes the All Saints' Day, and November 2nd is observed as the All Souls' Days every year. And the Carmelites, we also observe November 14th as All Carmelite Saints' Day, and November 15th as All Carmelite Souls' Day. So these are some things for, just as information. So how do we become saints with a small s? That is not the formal canonized saint, but saints as we are today, living. The benchmark of someone's holiness is not how often they say their prayers, how regularly they fast, how they wear their scapular, or how much they know about Carmel's saints, or about the church teachings, or about the Carmelite teachings. Rather, holiness is seen in those people who open themselves to God, who rely on God in the face of life's challenges, who live to the full the life which God has given them. So, true saints do not spend all their time doing holy things, even though that would be very tempting. No, that's not a sign of true saints. Nor do the true saints judge and criticize others, except when the prophetic role calls them to denounce injustice. Rather, true saints bring peace and joy to those around them. That's the mark of a true saint. A true saint is a peacemaker. A true saint spreads joy around them. True saints lived ascetic lives. Asceticism, that is exercising denial and self-control over the body. This is certainly an important part of a saintly life and of Carmelite spirituality. Without asceticism, we cannot pray well. We cannot live truly a Carmelite life. And it'll be stunted growth if we don't practice asceticism, which is prayer, fasting, penance. Asceticism helps us to reject the desires of the flesh which distract us from God. Ascetic practices are not holy in themselves, but all the world's major religions believe that self-mortification, self-denial, penance, and the renunciation of certain pleasures can help the believer to grow in virtue, overcome the sensual desires which distract them from God, and thus achieve a deeper relationship with God and other people, freed from self-centeredness. Asceticism is also helpful to combat vices and addictions like food addiction, addiction to alcohol, tobacco, drugs, or TV, or any other addiction, gossip. The purpose of asceticism is to offer God a pure heart, puritas cordis, so that God can fill us with His life and His love. Ascetical practice helps us to develop a contemplative attitude, preparing the way for God to grant us the gift of contemplation, the gift of friendship and union with Him. The goal of life itself is twofold. One part we acquire by our own efforts and the exercise of virtues, assisted of course by divine grace. This is to offer God a pure heart and holy heart, free from all stains of sin. The other goal of life is granted to us as a free gift of God, namely to taste somewhat in the heart and to experience in the mind the power of the divine presence and the sweetness of heavenly glory, not only after death, but already here in this mortal life. And that was taken from the 10 books, book 1, chapter 2. So with that, I'd like to conclude today's lesson saying with ascetic practices, we can truly start experiencing divine contemplation in this life. life, the union of the soul with God, can be experienced now, right now, while we are here on earth. And it is a foretaste of what we will experience in heaven. And the sacraments of the church help us to prepare our hearts for that union with God. And the ascetic practices, the self-discipline, all of that helps us to pray better and to be open so that our heart is prepared, our heart is pure, and God can work in our life and in our heart and transform us to become saints, as we are all called to be saints. It's a universal call to holiness. No one is excluded. And that's my reflection. I hope you have a blessed day and have a blessed continued Easter season. And today we begin the novena for Pentecost. So if you pray novenas, today is the day you start your day one for the novenas prayers for the Descent of the Holy Ghost, Pentecost Sunday. Thank you. Have a blessed day.